Thank you, Emily and Ayse and Mireille, for super interesting talks. I think for the sake of time, I'll just open the floor to questions from the public immediately. Are there any questions?
Thank you. You know, in listening to you, I was thinking the future of robotics, and would we want different robots for different tasks, humanoid or animal or whatever? For instance, if I have an emotional need, then I might want something nice and cuddly. But if I have an intellectual need, then I might go with a voice like Siri. So, which isn't a robot at all, of course, but it is an interactive machine, even though it's at a distance and so on. So I'm wondering if you have given any thought to the idea that instead of talking about robots generally, or robots that look like us, we could kind of relate what the form of the robot is to the actual need at the moment of the person who needs a robot.
Do you have a particular person to ask us to? Then I'll give it to.
I'll let others talk. Yes, absolutely. So there's a distinction in AI, like the weak AI and strong AI distinction classically, right? So you could have a robot be indistinguishable from human as sort of a strong AI goal, but that isn't necessarily what people need in their day-to-day lives. It's very interesting whether we can do it or not. But in reality, what's going to happen is what you described, is that the robot's design is going to reflect its function.
And just on that, it would be great, and I know it's all hypothetical now, but changing quite quickly, if the design could adapt and be dynamic so that it is the case that you don't have necessarily different robots for different functions across the board, but maybe for like a home help robot per se, that could change design and function depending on your needs. But I'm sure that won't work. There won't ever be a universal robot, but I don't think.
Okay, everybody gets a little say. I would say that if you take robots serious as an intelligent thing, whatever that is, and that means you take their embodiment serious, then you must not expect that they look like humans, because they are not humanly embodied. So you must let them grow sort of from their embodiment. I'm quite surprised at the attempt still actually to make robot looks like humans, and also a bit worried about it, because imagine if you can, via neuroscience insights, predict what people are going to buy in terms of what your robot wants. The capacity for manipulation becomes exponential. So these are all very important and interesting questions.
I just want to add something on that note, is when I collaborate with these people who make these androids, they're very difficult to make. They limit the robot's movement, and then they're uncanny in the end. They're very expensive. So why are you doing this? Just make a robot-looking robot. People have a much better, engagement with it. Uncanny Valley is not a problem. But why do we have dolls? Why do we have Frankenstein? Part of our, I worry about this too, but part of us wants to do this crazy thing of, perhaps making an immortal thing in our image.
Any other questions?
Maybe to start with Professor Hildebrandt. Effective robots will be very expensive devices. We're seeing academic prototypes and hobbyist prototypes in a sense here. Maybe make an analogy with the video game industry that started off with something that was very crude, but now they're multi-million-dollar efforts to produce good video games. Likewise, these will be very expensive items, and they'll be done by corporations, and corporations want to protect their interest. And one of the ways they use is to protect IP is patent, trademark, copyright, for instance. So what does that mean when patents are sought for personalities, and there's personality piracy that you have to worry about, in the same way that who would have thought 100 years ago that the police state would be breaking down the doors of 14-year-old bedrooms searching for pirated music, and then throwing in the other aspect of Well, there's protection against search from governments, but once you click and accept, once you click one of those agreements, your robot could be very legally rifling through your dresser door. Are we preparing the way for the distributed physical manifestations of our corporate person overlords here?
Yeah, I think these are very good questions. Google bought 8 robotics startups last year. And not everything that Google touches becomes gold, but it's an indication if they're throwing their money there that they're expecting a business model. So this is my major concern. Whoever is paying for this has to make money on it, right? So they're not just going to do things that we like. They're going to do things that we like if we're willing to somehow pay for it with our data or whatever. And you get, in terms of the law, you get the existing problem exponential between intellectual property rights and, for instance, privacy. So the privacy issue here, I think, is not your personal data, your name or your height or something like that, but the profiles. So you can be targeted, you can be calculated. When I, as a robot, act like this, then Mireille Hildebrand's behavior will probably be like that. And whoever is paying for it will try to write a program that elicits behaviors in me that are profitable. And that's an enormous concern. My personal opinion is that if we're going to have these sort of smart environments, we have to, at a political level, simply demand that this is open source and that we have access to how we're being profiled. And that's, of course, only the beginning of solving the problem, because we don't think in terms of algorithms.
Thank you. I actually also have a question that I would like to ask to Ayse. You talked about the uncanny valley, and then in the end you showed us some slides of a non-robotic uncanny valley appearances. When I moved to the Bay Area, I noticed people on the street who have drag and have not drag. So half of their face would be long hair and makeup, and the other half would be so female, and the other half would be male. And I was thinking about this uncanny valley as it was always related to robotics, but it's also related to, in real life, to say the queer population. Would you say that robots are queer?
I think if they feel like they are, it's not a sensitive answer. No, this is a very good observation, and I try to talk about it sensitively without, offending anybody. But I really do even think, there's a part of homophobia. Like there's ads or things you see where, you see somebody from behind and guy thinks it's a female and turns out it's a man, and oh my God, that even has the sense of your prediction being violated. And here, I think the queer community kind of, takes that and uses this as a source of empowerment. So I think the robots or avatars or whatever artificial agents that we design are going to reflect our culture, and possibly more than our culture, corporate interests and such. So it's interesting. I think it's going to depend probably on the communities who want to protect those aspects of the culture to sort of represent that in our avatars and robots. Because otherwise I feel like whatever we have in today's society is going to be reflected in our artifacts. And that's probably going to mean that, like in the Bay Area, you'll have more queer robots. And I'm just guessing these things, obviously. But I really do think there's a uncanny valley-like feelings. The other thing happens is, for instance, I'm a very, feminine-looking person, small and everything, but, I'm very kind of Mediterranean and aggressive, and sometimes I do something that's traditionally male, and I feel like it gets more of a reaction from people than if I looked more, less feminine, for example, or on a day where I'm wearing jeans versus when I'm wearing a dress, I find my aggressive behavior is considered more unusual sometimes. So we are constantly doing these kinds of predictions, I think.
Yeah, just on that, I think it does ultimately come back to violations of prediction error, and in predictive coding, this idea that Ayse presented really, really well. And I wonder as especially younger generations are growing up with more fluctuating dynamic environments, if having bistable percept, such as someone who's half male, half female, or a robot that acts in a certain way that to someone viewing it in the 1960s, that would be so uncanny and so unpredictable. I wonder if the human brain in this very, very fast evolution might just be more open to violations of predicted because you don't have such strong predictions. I wonder if that might be something we see occurring.
Do we have to end? No, take one more question. Okay, we take one more question for the audience.
Well, and just maybe a very short answer because you may not be able to address this. In the stage version of Warhorse, and I see some nods, and not the movie version. So they have puppets, life-size puppets on the stage because they have to have horses on the stage. And so they are shaped like horses, but we see the three puppeteers, and they're extremely emotionally engaging because of the motion. And we also have to believe the emotional engagement between the horses and the actor. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the research, the hypotheses, what you've seen, what you can tell us about that kind of emotional engagement with those kinds of, in that case, puppets.
I'll start, and then absolutely, I saw, I didn't see the live production, but I saw videos of the stage production because somebody sent it to me. And if you look at the work of Disney or Pixar or well-designed interactive agents in general, one of the things that's very important is the what I might call fluency between you and the technology. So, you want somebody to nod at the right time when you're talking, not 5 minutes later. So getting that timing right will make the interaction look a lot more, suddenly sort of give life to it. And if you look at a well-done animation, that's kind of what they play with as well. And motion is an incredibly powerful cue to give the sense that you are getting feedback from this entity, whether it's your phone or the horses. So it is absolutely important, and artists have intuitive sense of what to do. And I guess people like me are kind of like a drag because I want examples of things that don't work so I can show it to people and figure out, why it doesn't work. And most artists are figuring out how to make it work better. So I need failed art or failed avatars and whatnot. Let me know.
Yeah, I think this another way of putting what Ashley was just talking about there is this idea of contagion. You have to see the contagion. So stimulus response, the actor speaks and the horse responds, or the horse responds and moves in a certain way. And we are so biologically tuned, just like what Ashley was showing with faces, to see movement that's contagious, that is something in response to something else. And I think that the directors and the artists behind Warhorse have captured that exquisitely. They've done it so well. But it's something that, again, it becomes really interesting to us as scientists to see what happens when that breaks down, when the contagion isn't there. And not seeing the contagion or not responding with contagion is also something that's of interest to people who are studying things such as autism spectrum disorders, and kind of not seeing the emotional response. And we cannot form the same emotional bonds with an agent or an entity that doesn't have that kind of contagion. And yeah, very interesting for artists and scientists alike, I'd say.
Okay, great. Thank you all. This is a great lead, and I really appreciate we have these dilemmas already on the table. I want to thank all the panelists and Shanti for moderating.